Okay, so thank you, first of all, being invited here by Joe, so thank you for letting me speak here. So my topic today is on mobile development for the enterprise, and I call it hybrid approach. So I'll just give a quick introduction. I'm Mary Grygleski. I work for a wireless company. I'm a senior application engineer architect for the web and mobile team at US Cellular. I'm also director of meetings for Chicago Java Users Group. And I started working in the 80s, like from Unix C and all the way now to more of the newer things. So the talk is about more high-level technical overview of my account mobile app and my company. So I just said insert disclaimer because I'm not going to talk about things on the code level, given the fact that I only get 5 minutes or so. But maybe at a future meetup I can do something more in depth too. So I'll also talk about why build a mobile app and some of the complexity and challenges that are involved in developing and deploying the hybrid mobile app. And also my company being like enterprise company, so the ecosystem is quite convoluted. Not necessarily well-defined, it's just that there are a lot of old legacy backend systems that we need to work with. So that's a kind of huge challenge. And then I also just touch on a little bit of the essential, like non-functional aspect of the ecosystem, like security, performance, testing, debugging. And then if I have time, I'll talk about a little bit like a rather intriguing issue of the Android runtime that I found out when I was like testing the Cordova hot code push plugin. And basically, I'll talk about it more when I get to it. So the technology stack being used is the UI UX layer is using an old AngularJS, Angular 1. And then it's the My Account. Inside it, there's a lot of e-commerce shopping functionality. Essentially, it's just making money for the company. So so that makes use of an Oracle ATG Dynamo. If you have someone maybe have worked with that, it's just an old e-commerce engine owned by Oracle. So it's Java JDK 7. And then we also make use of a service layer on the UI. On the front end, it's backend for front end. And we use Node to do that. And then the hybrid mobile app is enabled through the use of Apache Cordova. Then we also have API service layer, like a facade. It's actually using, company, again, has these old legacy systems, and that's a SOAP interface, and it's making use of the Oracle ESB layer. Then that's kind of complicated. It also makes use of an IBM Data Power, some older kind of security system that's put in place. So. And then there's also a RESTful service layer that's relatively new. It's developed by a vendor, and that's a proprietary, they call it UXF framework. It's really a MVC pattern framework that allows like client side to access it through a RESTful layer. Then core business logic backend is really vendor proprietary. They call it a top system, and it's really like managing like order management and customer service and wireless subscriber systems. They are managed through like all the business logic is being done on that layer. And on the security side, we have the access management, authentication, and security tokens, and we make use of OAuth too. So just a quick diagram. I unfortunately don't have enough time to draw in a better picture, but at least give you an idea is that we have the web and UI UX layer, then that's the mobile side. I just highlighted it. That's what my talk is mainly about. And then make use of the Node, the backend for front end layer, and also talking to the e-commerce engine. And then it makes use of, it goes through the SOAP layer to talk to the backend, and also to the vendor has a RESTful layer. And then I also wanted to bring up the Cordova. That's how we have a hot code push functionality that essentially will allow the apps to be the app to be updated without you noticing it. As long as as soon as you log on, then the hot code push plugin will then check to see if there are any updates being done to the content or the assets. Then it will actually push any changes to your devices. So that's what it looks like.
You mentioned you're using Angular, but you're not using Ionic.
I'm sorry, which one?
Are you using Ionic or just using raw Angular?
Just Angular.
Okay.
Angular in the front end, the HTML, the regular web code, and then using Cordova to basically do the wrapping, and then to kind of enable it and generate all the code, the native code. So also then talk about why build a mobile app. The company actually already has a My Account, just like your cell phone company. You can log on to your My Account. You can use it through the web, but but basically to the customers that requested that application or requested the mobile app. So that way we can distribute the app to the App Store, and actually it just got released like 2 days ago. The US Cellular My Account, but US Cellular doesn't have a market here in Chicago anymore. But yeah, so but they just release it, and then you can, the customer can also use this one-tap access to account information, and they can use the keep me logged in functionality. And again, there's the push notifications too, that basically marketing can also make use of this to kind of publish the marketing messages to all the users on the devices. And then of course the social media interactions too is a lot easier on devices. And then, so what are the differences between native versus hybrid apps? So native apps are built using programming language native to the device OS, like Java. It's very obvious, Java on Android or Objective-C or Swift on iOS. The hybrid apps are actually built using JavaScript, and the same as on the web. So we just need the Cordova to translate it. But ultimately, too, like native and hybrid, they will produce the same result. But it depends on the type of app. Hybrid was chosen for the company because basically we decided, or management decided, that it's more a content-focused app, so they don't require too many native features, so they can be done using hybrid. And also
for less
the
effort, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then also skill sets too. Like inside the company, there wasn't anybody who know already much about mobile app native development, so that's why we're kind of going with the hybrid approach. So just some of the non-functional aspect will be security. That's a kind of big concern. So we make use of like OAuth to do the security tokens kind of mechanism to do that. And then also there's also a performance issue that we need to be like concerned about. And then also the testing aspect of it too. Testing actually turns out to be quite complex because of the fact that we need to make sure that there are certain customers set up so we can test those functionalities, like using your device and like for example, like especially for wireless company, as I kind of have started to learn more about it, because I'm also somewhat new to the wireless industry too. I've only been there for 1 year. But let's say you have plans that are grandfathered, and then you have new plans that come out, and so how do you do it if you want to try to make changes to your plans? And actually it's extremely complex, the business logic scenario. So the testing side, in fact, is actually pretty much a challenge for the company. And also too, we have to coordinate too with the different environments, or actually even different systems, because I was explaining too is we have systems that are managed by vendors, and then vendor develops some other layers of the applications, and we have to make sure they all kind of come together and work together. And also, of course, the debugging aspect too is also a challenge. So yeah. So just now I was explaining too the complexity. I think I got the slides kind of a little bit we shuffled a little bit. So okay. So yeah, so security is a big concern. We just have to make sure that we're kind of keeping vigilant. And in fact, too, we did find out an issue of what was that? I actually forgot about it. But then anyway, we actually had to like work on like adding in a CAPTCHA system too when we going through the login process. So and also the challenges for enterprise level applications is that you have all these vendors. Again, there are different like business functions that we need to coordinate with. So when it comes to integration time, it's actually quite a complex scenario that came up.
Hey, Mary.
So, yeah.
Did you say you have a CAPTCHA on the login of your mobile app?
Yeah, I was
Yeah, well, sorry, I think I probably was watching through. Yeah, actually, I shouldn't say it's on the login, but like during the login process, then there's a captcha. Actually, that part I didn't do that part. It was a vendor who did that. But anyway, I just
But
thought
you're on
I'd
a
brought
mobile
it up.
phone.
Yeah, on the
You're
mobile phone. Yeah.
probably human.
Yeah.
I guess you don't have to be.
You didn't use support secondary authentication?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You didn't use like two-factor authentication?
Two-factor. That's correct. We don't use two-factor actually. We're just using the captcha. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I've not
interesting.
seen that on mobile.
It's US Cellular.
Yeah, I can have to say the company does make some interesting decisions. Okay, and of course the testing is not simple, and the DevOps pipeline, and that's something too we're still trying to work on, because we need it's a different way of doing things. You need to generate your APK or your IPA file, and then how do you like upload to the App Store. So that part we've developed actually our own internal like web store, but it's just essentially just a file system. So for internal testing, it's easy enough, but actually to do, especially to like iTunes like update or iTunes like deployment, is a very painful process because Apple is very strict, and little things if you're out of
Provisioning
ordinary
profiles.
provision,
That's all you have to
provisioning,
say.
but that's what
Yeah,
we spend
fun
a lot
stuff.
of time. Just the certificates and everything was a big challenge. So, yeah, and it's not easily automated too. It's and also too because of us using Cordova and a multitude of like plugins. Those plugins too, if you try to update those plugins, actually they will be very hard to. We found out was that it's actually hard to automate it, because every time you do the Cordova, you have to remove your plugin and then update your plugin again. And Cordova, for some reason, is not necessarily doing the update correctly when you're adding in plugins and then like removing plugins. So every time if there are any new plugins or plugin changes, we have to actually do it manually, and then we can then put back into our scripting procedure to actually do the automated build. So last but not least, I just thought I want to bring up this interesting issue. We were testing the hardcode push plugin functionality, then all of a sudden it kept not able to actually push the code. So we're wondering what is going on. It only happens on Android, and turns out it's actually an SSL issue, because we're using for internal testing, we're using like non-recognized like internal certificate of authority, which is in like one of those recognized self-signed, yeah, essentially self-signed. But initially too, nobody knew how to do it. So actually, if I had time, I would have like set up to just show you how I actually was able to plug in the device, do device level debugging using Android ADB, and basically it's relatively, once you figure it out, it's not so bad. But initially too, it's kind of hard to do. But basically too, I plug in the Android device and run ADB on it, then came to find out it's a SSL handshake error exception. And that's how we determined this, because of the self-signed cert problem. Yeah, actually Cordova too comes up with this new declarative way of, like, because if you have used Cordova, you make use of the config.xml, where you can then over there it basically helps you with all the configuration. And it actually provides you a way to use XML to basically add in like domains inside your company, where you can recognize it kind of like override the default Android way. You can actually put it as one of your recognized certificate authority, and then that will kind of overcome that problem too. So, but that was kind of interesting. I just thought to bring this up. So. Yeah, so this is all I have. Thank you, and thank you for your patience. And I'm sorry I don't have anything to show as much on the code level this time.
Thank you. Hey, Mary.
Yeah.
You mentioned like all of the legacy backend stuff, mostly backend stuff that you guys are having to deal with. Are a lot of those things like are they being transitioned, or like you just stuck with some of that stuff?
Yeah, I think we're being kind of stuck with it. Part of it is that my company has been heavily depending on this company that actually they specialize in wireless or telecom industry, like systems. So they have a very smart way of like making your customers stay with them the way they develop code. They don't actually open source their code at all.
Sure.
Even though you pay them tons of money, they don't open up their code. And I think part of it too is maybe the company should have done a better job writing up the contract and saying, you open source your code so then we can work with it.
Or at
but
least
they don't.
we've licensed it
Yeah,
or
like
something.
but they don't have that clause. So unfortunately, that becomes kind of completely closed source and like a proprietary system.
So then this is the company that is the layer on top of Oracle, it seems like, right? So you mentioned that.
Yeah, this is a kind of
one.
consulting company. Yeah, that's right, layer on top, yeah.
Yeah, so they're ones that are providing the RESTful API for you to interface with.
That's right, an interface. But even with the
That's
RESTful
smart.
API, we're asking them, can you expose your API? They said, no, it's
not.
So it's like, oh my gosh,
How would you
how
do
can
that?
you do
Yeah,
development
how
and
would you
not
do
be
that?
exposing
Send me another check.
APIs? Yeah. So it's, in a kind of
I
challenge.
think that's
Yeah.
probably the most frustrating part about working with a lot of core-party legacy software.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they're under contract. And
It's not really a corporate
Yeah.
thing, it's a product thing.
Well, it is a product thing, but corporate doesn't really understand the need to open it up.
I guess, within the same company, and most companies being software driven to some degree or another nowadays, you will see products that the company has that is stuck on legacy software and newer products that are not. And you just have like two teams of people who completely hate each other.
That's so true, Joe.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Then
Nail on the
it's
head.
more
Very true.
to
Yeah.
Your job, but there's always an excuse where I need more time, or that's gonna cost you an extra,
Well,
grand.
that's why we're software developers.
Only if you can get it to code.
Yes.
So I remember tinkering with Cordova way back when, but I know Adam had asked about Ionic, and I guess I was wondering, it sounds like Cordova just wraps all the code up in a web view, and then you get a native web view on Android or iOS or Windows or whatever.
That's right.
But since you guys are using Angular, do you know if anyone's looked at Ionic?
You mean my-
Or NativeScript, I guess would be the other one,
Well,
right?
I mean, Ionic would make more sense, but so you're hand rolling all your navigation and everything then. Controls and
Yes,
everything.
that's right, yeah, we're.
That seems
that's-
insane.
They're hardcore.
That's hardcore and unnecessary.
It's like vanilla
Yeah.
native development in Angular with Cordova.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Cordova came first,
So-
right? And then Ionic
Yeah, I know, yeah.
rode that train, but
What's
seems
the-
like they probably
what
made a
about,
decision between
what was
those
it?
two.
No, PhoneGap comes in between those.
Yeah.
I don't know where PhoneGap is now, though.
It's
Is it gone?
Cordova is a phone gap. So.
Right, it's just a rename.
They had PhoneGap built into Dreamweaver. You could just write your code, click on a PhoneGap thing, it would like send it off to some PhoneGap server and send you back your APK, and you could just sideload it onto Android like that. Like you would just click a button, and in a minute you would have your Android application ready to go. It was awesome, and you didn't have to know anything.
How do you compare NativeScript with?
I keep bringing up NativeScript because I know of it and I know it uses Angular, but I've never used it.
'Cause I'm looking at NativeScript. I want to think about using NativeScript for a project. So
yeah, NativeScript is native. It compiles to native. That's a whole
Well-
other animal. It's wrapping the actual native controls, whereas in Ionic it's just using WebView.
My understanding though is,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fan of React, so React Native, and I'm a fan of Angular, so NativeScript sounds cool, but
Yeah.
Swift is really the thing to learn. I mean, and my understanding is that Swift is, the whole point of it is to kind of bring JavaScript developers over. I think it's very JavaScript-like.
Yes.
It's also very C#y like. So yeah.
Well, at the end of the day,
crossover.
too, though, just, React, I'm
It
sorry,
doesn't get you
Oh, no,
to
that's
Android.
at the end of the day,
It's good to-
with all of them, I
Get
mean,
some
you need to learn
discussion
all that
going.
native crap anyways. With React Native, like, you can't go super far
Yeah, you need to get
without
down, yeah.
starting to figure out how to connect all these, tap into Bluetooth stuff and
Sorry, real
whatever.
quick. A lot of the problems you were talking about, were those problems just about building for mobile or building specifically because you guys are going from a hybrid approach?
I think they're both too. Hybrid too, I think has its drawback too, as you know. Yeah, it's just, how can I say? I'm sorry, my mind is a little blank today because I was actually packing the whole half the day. Company move, but I think part of it, yeah, what was it? Yeah, well, if I think of, I'll talk to you after. I mean, I have to kind of swap some memory back into my mind. Yeah,
She'll send you an
just,
email.
we're kind of busy days.
Yeah, I mean, you can think about like if hybrid for me. I've done this analysis with the client. I've done deep analysis on both hybrid and native. Hybrid's a great solution if it's basically you're presenting forms. You're just not doing anything that has to tap too much into the native functionality of the device. You can easily do photos. You can do a lot, and the community support is actually really strong when it comes to things like using Ionic. So I mean, it's a really viable solution for a lot of applications, in my opinion. And the code reuse is near 100%, which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can use
So-
JavaScript on your HTML
Yeah.
website too.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and you can look at it in the browser. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially, yeah, you don't need to learn how to code in Java, for example, or
Yeah.
you don't need to like Swift. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, man.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.